Hello, Linda.
Hello, Litty.
Nice to see you. So, we're going to
Nice
read
to see you
chapter
too.
4. What's the
Okay.
name of the book, Linda?
Jane Eyre,
And the author?
Charlotte Bronte.
Right. Now, can you see the way the lady is dressed?
Yes, she's dressed in a black dress. And
Yes. And
yes,
you can see a very narrow waist and a very
yes.
full skirt. Would you have liked to have dressed like that?
Yes, if I would come back to this era.
I don't know because I like to wear as little clothing as possible. I like to be comfortable more than glamorous, no? Because
Yes,
she's wearing black, but I think people of this time used to look quite glamorous, no? And worry
yes.
about what they wore. So, would you be so kind as to start to read chapter 4?
Okay. Mr. Rochester. 3 months passed. I had not met the owner of Thornfield Hall. Mr. Rochester had not come home. One January afternoon, I went out and I walked towards the road. I was going to the village of Hay. I was going to post a letter in the village. Hay was 2 miles from Thornfield Hall, 2 miles from Thornfield Hall. The day was fine, but it was very cold. I walked quickly and soon I was near the village. Suddenly, a big black and white dog ran past me. A moment later, a man on a black horse followed the dog. Then I heard an angry shout. The dog ran past me again. It was barking loudly. I turned round. The horse had fallen on the icy ground and the man had fallen from the horse. I walked towards them.
Right. So we mustn't forget when this story is taking place. It's taking place in about 18 something. And you can imagine she's living in a very remote place. So it's in the middle of nowhere. So she's out walking, and this is happening to her. And she is living at the moment in Thornfield Hall.
Yes.
Can I help you? I asked. My horse fell. I've hurt my foot, the man said. The horse stood up. The man tried to stand up too, but he could not stand. He fell onto the ground again. The man was about 35 years old. He was not handsome, but he had a strong face. He had dark eyes and black hair. He was not very tall, but his body was powerful. I'll bring someone from Thornfield Hall, I said. Do you live at Thornfield? The man asked. Now, can you describe this picture to me? What can you see?
Yeah, I can see a man fallen on the ground, and I guess the horse was his, and the girl or the lady trying to help him.
Right.
And I can see also his stick and hat on the ground.
Right. So I know the photo's in black and white, but I think we get the idea that he's in the countryside from what we can see.
Yes.
And we
Yes.
can see the dog which was barking and the horse standing there. And the man looks like he's in pain, lying on the floor, no?
Yes.
After falling off his horse. And there you can see his hat. And I think that you could call that stick like a whip, not to hit the horse if it's not doing what it's saying,
Okay.
not what it's supposed to do.
Okay.
And also we can see Jane. Jane looks very petite, very frail. And we don't know how she's going to help this man, no?
Yes.
Right, off you go. Linda, if
I
you want
am
to
the
read.
governess. Okay. I'm the governess, I replied. Oh, yes, the governess, the man said. Help me, please. The man stood up very slowly, and he put his hand on my shoulder. He walked slowly towards his horse. I helped him. He pulled himself onto the horse. Thank you. Now go home quickly, the man said, and rode away. I walked onto the village and I posted my letter. Then I returned to Thornfield Hall. Bright lights were shining in the big house. I went inside. A big black and white dog walked toward me. It came from the dining room. I had seen the dog before. Whose dog is that? I asked the servant. It's Mr. Rochester's dog, the servant replied. Mr. Rochester has come home, but he has hurt his foot. His horse fell on some ice.
Right. So when she was trying to help him, she didn't realize who he was. So now she's just getting an idea. I smiled. The owner of Thornfield Hall had returned, but I did not see Mr. Rochester again that day. I saw Mr. Rochester the next day. He sent for me in the evening. I put on a clean dress. I brushed my hair carefully. Mr. Rochester was in the large sitting room. He was sitting in a big chair. His right foot was on a small chair. Miss Fairfax and Adele were sitting with him. This is Miss Eyre, sir, Miss Fairfax said. Mr. Rochester looked at me. He did not smile. So to refresh our viewers' memory, Mrs. Fairfax is the housekeeper. She is the one that looks after everything. And Adele is the girl who Mr. Rochester is looking after. And Jane Eyre is the governess of Adele, or Adele's governess. So this is when we are meeting Mr. Rochester. Sit by the fire, Miss Eyre, he said. Where have you come from? From Lowood School, I replied. I was there for 8 years. 8 years, Mr. Rochester said. That is a long time. Who are your parents? I have no parents, sir, I answered. They are dead. But where is your home, Miss Eyre? Mr. Rochester asked. I have no home, sir. I have no family, I said. Why did you come to Thornfield Hall? Mr. Rochester asked. I wanted to leave Lowood, sir, I replied. I put an advertisement in a newspaper. Miss Fairfax replied to my advertisement. Yes, I did, Miss Fairfax said. Miss Eyre is a good teacher, Mr. Rochester. So if we remember, Jane went to school as an orphan. An orphan is a person who doesn't have any family. And she studied there for 8 years before becoming a teacher. Right. Mr. Rochester smiled for the first time. You are very young, Miss Eyre, he said. I'm 18, sir, I replied. Mr. Rochester smiled again. He did not ask me more questions. After that evening, I did not see Mr. Rochester for a few days. Then one night he sent for me again. Sit near me, Miss Eyre, he said. Miss Fairfax will talk to Adele. I sat down quietly, but I did not speak. The fire was very bright. I saw Mr. Rochester's face clearly. I saw his large, dark eyes. He was smiling. He was happy. After a few minutes, Mr. Rochester spoke. Miss Eyre, he said, you are looking at me very carefully. Am I a handsome man? No, sir, I said. You speak the truth, Miss Eyre, Mr. Rochester said. Look at me again. Am I a kind man? No, sir, I said again. You are smiling now, but you are not always kind. This is true, Mr. Rochester replied. I have had a difficult life. I have met bad people. I have been a bad person myself. Now Thornfield Hall is my home, but I hate this house. You are very young, Miss Eyre. You cannot understand me. You are right. I do not understand you, sir, I said, and I stood up. So with this conversation, we can gather that there is a mystery in this house, and there is a reason why Mr. Rochester doesn't like the house, but we still don't know yet. So in this picture, we can see three people. Three people who we presume are Mrs. Fairfax here, the housekeeper. We think this because of the hat she's wearing and the apron. And this is Adele, the young girl who is in the house. And they're reading a book together. And we suppose that this is Jane Eyre sitting near Mr. Fairfax. Now here we have another picture. And we can presume what we read before, that this is Mr. Rochester. And he sat on a big armchair by the fire, and with his injured leg, he has put it on a small stool. And the dog that always accompanies him is sat by his side. And here we can see some candlesticks which are giving light to the room. Where are you going? Mr. Rochester asked. It is late. Adele must go to bed, I said. Are you frightened of me, Miss Eyre? Mr. Rochester asked. No, sir, I replied. But you say strange things, sir. Mr. Rochester smiled. Take Adele to her bedroom now, Miss Eyre, he said. We will talk again tomorrow. After that night, we talked together many times. Mr. Rochester was an interesting man, but he was a strange man too. I often thought about him. Why does Mr. Rochester hate Thornfield? I asked myself. Thornfield Hall is a beautiful place, but Mr. Rochester isn't happy. So we have finished chapter 4 today. So I hope the viewers have enjoyed that. And we have left it with Jane Eyre having conversations with Mr. Rochester. She's very young. She's only 18 and Mr. Rochester's 35. So she can't quite understand the way a man acts and what he said. So we will join it again, Linda, in next week's chapter. Okay, let's say goodbye. Bye.
Okay, bye.